Talk about education and schools and, how the economic situation relates to that. That brings us to the next question, which will be directed to you, Professor Hilbert. What do you think of, or to what extent is the paradox that we cut funding for the fine arts in public?
Well, I think I'm going to start this with, well, let's cut football and baseball and soccer, and let the kids go out on their own initiative out into the park and make up their own teams. And let's not, spend the public funding on doing frivolous sports activities. No, I don't. Whatever. I don't really mean that, but in a sense I do. But or why not just throw out all the computers that are going to be useless in 5 years and pollute our toxic dumps and leach into our water supplies and create environmental hazards? Why we keep getting more and more of them? Again, ridiculous. But the point I'm making is, why is it when we say, well, we're going to cut the music and the painting and the arts and the dance programs at school, everybody says, oh yeah, that's okay. But if we said the other things, everybody would be, standing up outraged, So what I'm saying is that the society accepts it. Now, isn't that interesting? That the society that we are so conditioned to accept that in times of less affluence, that's the first thing to go, And that may be the thing that's giving the culture some kind of psychological cohesion. But it's let go.
What do you think that is? What do you think is?
Well, let me read my statement. I think it's interesting that I don't see it as a paradox, but as a reaffirmation of the position that the arts are peripheral to the social and political agenda. So, of course, we have a cut in funding to the arts. The arts in times of affluence are only insincerely dragged out to promote political candidacy or as entertainment for a middle-brow public. There is a wariness of the individualism of the artist and the alternative sensate and transcendent reality they seek to depict. Practical values such as cultural tourism and the job opportunities it brings along with it are the only values acknowledged in the social and political spheres. Don't become an artist. How will you survive is repeated, instead of how well will you survive without the arts. The spiritual retreat of transcendence and cultural critique, central to the arts, is a bit too dangerous for the culture to embrace in any significant way. And certainly the politicians and the power elite prefer to do just fine without it. The rest of society, at its own emotional and psychological peril, often do the same. But why? Well, I can understand why the politicians don't do it, but I'm a little wary of why the public is very timid. It's always timid. It's really afraid to stand up to the politicians generally, and doesn't know how to. It doesn't have the time to, I think, too. I think the politicians make sure everybody is so busy. My big theory is since the 60s is, they put everybody to work. The man used to work, but now the man, the woman, the children, everybody works. So everybody is physically exhausted, so nobody can protest. They had enough protests in the 60s. They said, let's get rid of that. Problem.
Do you have any comments on this? That's a very good theory, I must say. But I do notice that I do feel that the public is very timid, and they get a thrill, going to the museums and not really standing in front of a painting for very long to understand it, just kind of walking through. Feel like it's a more social event rather than...
It's a little bread and circuses, I think, for the public.
Yeah,
it's like I mean, I always wonder what people are seeing when they pass the painting beyond the artist's name and the title and the year it was done. You know, it's like, what is coming off the work and really seeping into them? And I think it takes a lot of looking. I mean, it takes going to the museum more than once or twice or 3 times into the gallery, because I think it's a collective kind of consciousness that you get of repeated viewings of things, and you start sorting things out, and you start understanding what the artist is trying to get at through repeated viewings of their own work and of other artists' work, and comparing one thing to the other and the feelings and sensations that you're getting off the work.
I think like the like politicians and more of like authoritative perspective on art. They like things to be one way, and that's it. Like, you do this, and you go to work, you get out of work, you eat, you sleep, blah, blah, blah. But with art, how it's a collective consciousness, you look at it, and it looks totally different the next time. You're like, I didn't know there was a person on that boat. Or like, I didn't know that those eyes, there was something in the pupils. Like, every time you look at a piece of art, you see something else, and that's one of the most amazing things about actually viewing art, about actually appreciating art. And it might scare others because it's not solid. It's nothing that just always is. It makes the imagination wander, and that can be dangerous to like society, because then they realize they're capable of much more than what they're limited to at the moment. So they say, no, art really isn't that great. It's kind of boring. Why would you want to look at art? And then people are like, oh yeah, the government's always right. Of course it's boring. Just walk through the museum and look at what pretty girl walks by.
Since we're talking about like some sort of conformity coming from the regular person, right, in our society, like, how do you think, in maybe an idealistic world, what do you think could be done as artists? What do you think we should do?
Well, I don't know that much can be done beyond trying to expose as many people as possible to the arts and make it easy for them to access it. And that has been done. I don't know what great effect it's had, but I remember when I went to museums, say, when I was in college in 1962 or 3, I'd go up from Philadelphia to the Met. It was like churching. There was nobody in there. You could hear the hollowness of the sound, and it was like, hush. And now it's like a shopping mall.
Yeah.
It's a totally different model of viewing the work than it was back then. And is that better or worse? It's opened up art to a greater public, and I think that's good. But then the question I just said is, are they really responding to the work? And I think they are to some extent. Everybody responds to the work at their own level of experience and viewing. The longer you view, the more subtly you view, I think. But I think if they were going there, I don't think they're just going there because they're told to go there. I think they really want to be there, and they are getting some things off the work. And so in that way, I think maybe it's gotten better. And certainly the arts have proliferated in the colleges and university systems. There were not all the Bachelor of Fine Arts and Master of Fine Arts programs in 1962 that there are today. There are many more. There's hundreds of thousands of artists, gazillions of them, So it's like that wasn't true either. New York in the 1950s, there was a small little group of, probably 40 or 50 artists. Maybe there was more than that, and a few galleries. You know, it was like, I mean, I showed this Pollock tape to my class, and his wife, Lee Krasner, was on there, and she said, what was it she said? That it was just a very small group. And, she said, I didn't know there were people who really made paintings in the United States. I thought that was something they did over in Europe. You know? And that certainly has changed, you know. After the Second World War, that changed with all the famous European artists coming to the United States, teaching here, and changing the nature of American painting, really. And then, you know, all the programs, the GI Bill, where soldiers came back and studied art after the Second World War and the Korean War, you know, brought a whole nother group of people into the art milieu. You know, it's proliferated ever since. You know, but now we're having all these people with all these degrees in the arts, and the job situation for them is even worse than it was back then, and it wasn't great back then, you know. But, so I don't know. I think that's about the situation, perhaps.
If we were to bring this, you know, the kind of funding for the arts to more local level, let's say our schools, right? As a student, how do you feel about as an artist going to school at Union County College
And having the funds cut.
Yeah. Have you felt it at all? Do you think it's true, or?
Oh yeah, those eagles in the basement. They're wiggling, and like you think you could at least have something sturdy to paint on instead of like painting like this, and then it drops to the floor, and you're like, now it's broken. And it would be nice if the funding would support at least the ability to finish a painting. So it gets aggravating that the funding has cut in a hypothetical situation where the funding would be cut in a school like this. It kind of like, for an artist that's kind of just opening up to the field and is like, oh, I kind of like to draw. Painting's kind of cool, and then they have their supplies that are worthless. They kind of associate that difficulty in actually finishing art with the actual act of doing it. So when they think about painting again, they kind of associate like, oh, but I'm going to have a broken easel, and like the lighting is only one light in the room, or I don't know, something like that. Then they kind of just drop art, and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to really pursue this. It's too much of a hassle. And I think that many people probably don't really see that little thing could just change an entire future for someone. Like, someone who might actually be interested in expressing themselves all of a sudden feels like their surroundings are oppressing them. And they're like, never mind, I'm just going to close up again and do what I normally do. Mm-hmm. So it kind of nips it in the bud.
From the professor's perspective, how do you see it?
No comment. You got the drift, right?
Well, let me rephrase that. If we're talking about how things have gotten better after World War II, do you think, since you've been here since 1976, how does that change this particular school? How has the fine arts department changed here? Has it changed at all?
Please. You want to get me in
You're
trouble,
unleashing
right?
a beast.
Well, I think, to be truthful, I think the facilities have gotten worse. We used to have 2 huge rooms, a huge drawing studio and a painting studio in the basement. We went to the basement. We gave up light, the light of day, to get space.
No fans, by the way.
Yeah. And then we go down to the basement, and then the space gets cut up, and we get squeezed together, and the painting studio is like a third of the room. It's so crowded that people are walking over one another. But, whatever. And, the gallery was twice the size it is when I came here to the college. When the library got enlarged, the gallery was cut in half. So everything has shrunk. It's smaller. It's all smaller.
Is that because it's a 2-year school and the state puts money into 4-year art programs, or do we not know that?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know that. I just think, there's really a space problem at the college on all levels, whether it's parking or whatever.
Right.
And especially with the advent of the computer, I would say probably a lot of rooms were taken up with computers, and so that really absorbed a lot of the space. And plus the student body has gotten much bigger, so just more course offerings where they need more rooms, for everything. So I think that's probably...
Comment on the computers. I wanted to just point out that now that computers and technology have become such a giant part of our daily life, even at UCC, art has also conformed to computers, where programs like Photoshop and Coral Painter and Illustrator, they transcended art into digital. So now you can paint in a little square like this and make a painting the size of this room by just amping up all right, this many pixels by this many pixels, and work in layers. So some people use it to their advantage to copy and paste things and make pictures look different, and others try to use it like an actual painting, creating layers upon layers upon layers, up to maybe 100 layers of what you would normally do with paint. So I think computers have, in a sense, in the positive lighting, reduced a lot of mess that comes with painting, but also, I guess in a way, made it available for people who feel that they work better digitally than they do physically.
You think it created artists?
I'm sorry?
You think the digital revolution created artists?
Mm-hmm. Different kind.
I think it developed a different kind of artist. Typically, what most people see as graphic design now, working mostly with computers. I think it's still amazing art that they can make, but it's a different type of art, separate from classical.
It used to be called commercial art many years ago. You had commercial art courses in colleges and schools, or you had classical art classes.
Look at that.
Without computers. You had to still draw it yourself.
Yeah, I had a question, but I also have a comment on following on both of your commentary. I've been sitting here thinking that the American culture is steeped in a go-getter, action-oriented, youth-obsessed, and physical prowess type worship, and we're less a pensive society.
Mm-hmm.
And we're confessional. We're a confessional culture. I mean, you pop the television on at any time during the day, the daytime television shows, and there you'll see various people confessing to various things. But we're not a self-reflective culture, and I think that art is supposed to engage those faculties in us, the self-reflective qualities. And you spoke about the middle brow.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the middle classes, right?
Or the working classes.
Or the working classes.
Yeah.
And I think that in a capitalistic society such as ours is built